Hello, I'm Paul Healy, the editor of the Roscommon People newspaper, and our guest is Vincent Beirne, who's an independent candidate in the Roscommon Galway constituency. Welcome, Vincent.
Well, first of all, thanks very much for bringing me to your office, and it's an honour to be in, and I'm very grateful for your time and energy.
You're very welcome, Vincent. You're running in the general election, first-time candidate. Would you just tell our viewers and listeners a little bit about your background, where you're from and what prompted you to run?
Well, first of all, I originated from Boyle, County Roscommon. I'm the eldest of six. I'm currently 45 years of age. I'm currently living in a small little rural community in Listermead, Ferrymount. That's just between Balladreen and Castlereagh. Why I decided to run within the election this time, I realised exactly was the total disconnect in relation to the current government. The lack of understanding they have for our own people, and that's the way I feel. And looking at people day to day and talking to them, and communities that I have travelled within the 32 counties, because I travelled within the 32 counties within an era. Why I travelled in the 32 counties in relation to the Bunrock 1937, that's our original constitution, but that's a story for another day.
Yep.
But I was just used to watch communities and watch the demise of communities, and I watch how citizens of all ages from their 20s up to people in their 70s and late 70s in relation to what happened in their community. And when I was growing up, I was brought up in a stage that you'd had to have respect for your community and appreciation for your community, and we all were on the same parable. And the next thing, due to an emergency laws and this migration crisis, and we understand that there is a situation with migrants going on, but they were just like being rerouted into communities without even any dialogue. And then anyone that stood up in relation to this, then there was a stigma put them, they were racist. But I know the genuine people that I was speaking to, they were always form racist at all. There were people that actually had general concerns, but their concerns were pushed to one side. So that's exactly why I went into the situation of it running in the general election, was to give a different voice and a terminal voice, an independent voice and a strong voice for anyone that want to come to me. And I am myself a person that's fully empowered in myself. When I mean empowered in myself, I have dealt with all my own issues, as I am a shaman myself, and I deal with people on a daily basis in relation to traumas and everything else.
So just to be clear, you're a shamanic healer.
I'm a shaman and a shamanic healer.
And what does that involve?
Well, the aspect of the shaman, it deals with people that actually has suffered severe traumas.
Right.
It deals with people that has issues with soul loss and addiction and everything else. And when you're on about a shaman, I be a person that has the ability to guide and directly with spirit and help spirit, invite spirit in to help those that are in addiction. And it's a very powerful journey that's going on. It's just shamanic journeys. So that when you're on about shamanic journeys, currently I can journey to three worlds: a lower world, a middle world and an upper world. And that's for different messages. And then in relation to the land healing thing, I would deal there. Currently at this precise time, there's souls trapped in every part of the earth. So with that, then there's a kind of a fine line in the vein. So they can be draining with your energy, and they can be actually affecting, we say, your day-to-day living, and they can actually affect this current energy on the land within your home or within your land. And it can be ancestral as well. So with that, then I'm doing psychopump journeys and everything else. That's a voluntary thing I do for people, because I see life, and the way I look at life, you try and help people out the best way they can, because unfortunately we're in a time where people has a total disconnect and they have a lack of understanding and empathy for each other. So I've gone to the stage now that I'm trying to encourage communication and bring back a bit of normality again, because us people in this good land, we were in a situation one time that we used to communicate, we used to visit each other. Now what is it? There's a total disconnect. They don't even write a message to each other now. It's gone to the stage now as an emoji. And when we were up scholars and historians of this land, we were people that had a culture and we had a sense of humour. And there was a sense of character, and that's something that I would not like to see go. But unfortunately, within every town, city and villages, as years goes on, them characters are gone. And the new characters are afraid to follow suit now because they might be labelled. Yeah. So that's exactly why I have.
And traditionally we're a sociable people, but there's a lot of changes happening, I suppose. And do you apportion some of the blame or responsibility for that on central government or the political establishment?
Well, first of all, what the situation was, I would put the blame. Well, we understand we went through an epidemic and this, and there was a COVID thing, and from that, we said the pub industry that was gone at that precise time.
Yeah.
Then we understand there was a situation in the rural communities all the time. There was two fellas that would go for a social access, have the 2 or 3 pint, and then the way the law had come in with drunk driving, they decided to not go there. So it is actually an element of the law that they put in such restrictions in. Like, I'm not encouraging anyone to be over the limit drinking on the road, but we say your normal man there in his age bracket would have his 2 pints after work and was going in for his to have a communication. That's all totally gone now. The likes of them pubs now, what they have done, they're trying to bring in an incentive now to change them pubs into residential, and we know what the further outcome for that is. It's going to be a form of a place for non-residents of era to be resident in, and that's what we see more and more going on. Them commercial units are just changing them into residential. And then when we look at this element, they had this magical surprise that they can come forward and solve the housing crisis now. So then you look at people then that's been on the housing list for the last 20 years. I know a man that's on the housing list 25 years. He cannot get a house. But then at the end of the day, then they can bring in a person that may not be only in the country 6 weeks and get him a form of accommodation. So there's a bit of unfairness.
Yeah, and I know we're going to get on to immigration in a minute. I know you mentioned pubs closing. We've also seen banks and post offices and shops closing. So there's certainly a concern about rural Ireland and depopulation, and certainly
I looked at the likes of the shops and how the shops started closing, to be honest with you, and we're kind of the fault of that ourselves. We let it happen.
Yeah.
Because I came from Boyletown myself, and at that precise time, Boyletown, when I was in my 18, 19-year-olds, that's over 25 years ago, it was and there were small little shops, and each one of them shops, there was a form of community spirit in them. And you would have a job in the summer, but then Aldi's and Lidl and all these major people come in, and the competition decided. And people, for financial reasons, started going to them, and then with that, then the smaller shops win. So actually, we actually demised our own communities, and if we had looked back at it and had a foresight to see what we were doing, maybe for the short-term savings on a weekly aspect, we're maybe better off if we continue computing to our local communities and keeping them shops going. And then within that, then there would have been an aspect that these shops would have not went. But at the end of the day, we're very much culture too, we're infiltrated on money too and what we can save, and we kind of seen that where we're brought into a false perception within the boom where people borrowed up to their hilts. Unfortunately, some people lost their houses, and with that they went back to losing their homes. So we were led into a false perception year in, year out, and that's infiltrated in by lack of regulations by the government first of all, but they should have regulated the banks in relation to the borrowing of people. Because I knew people that had borrowed money and they were a husband and wife, and they never thought about when they'd have a child, and as soon as they got into a stage where they had family, they were actually in financial difficulty. So the banks then weren't actually working in the right attitude for the people coming in borrowing too. They were just giving out money, and when you start giving out money without any terms and conditions or regulations, there was inevitably going to be a crash. And that was seen on a bigger aspect, and the financial people and the government knew that. So we were actually led into false perception of life. And that's what's going on again now, because basically what life is scripted. They know exactly what's going to unfold. Now, you can actually be a martyr in it, or you can put your head in for the slaughtering. And unfortunately, a lot of people have gone out there in the daily aspect, and they don't know how complex the situation is. But it's wrote down. It's been wrote down exactly what way they're walking us into, and it's up to each one of us to educate ourselves on the bigger picture.
Okay, well, you're not a public representative as of yet in any event, Vincent, and you haven't really been in the public domain, but you were, I suppose, catapulted into it a few months back when you would it be fair to say you probably led opposition to proposals to move about 50 international protection applicants into an apartment block in Castlerea. At the time, there was speculation that was going to happen. There was a protest organised, and you were vocal at that time. Do you want to just reflect on that period?
Well, basically what had happened there, and once again, I got a phone call at 2:30 on a it's Friday night, Saturday morning in relation to what was happening to an apartment block within Castlerea. So what that did, I went into Castlerea and I looked at the place and I took a video and I posted the situation. I know exactly there was an injustice being done to Castlerea town, and I kept going forward with Castlerea town and fully empowered, and there was people within the Castlerea town had a voice. So we went to the stage that there was a protest called for a Sunday, and then they had the protest cancelled and they cut down all media footage off at that stage. It even got to the stage that the current Taoiseach at that time, Simon Harris, made an interview with 6-1 News that thankfully that all these people who were Castlerea, the natives, have actually pulled away from the place, and that there was only people that was inside on it with Google Maps that was in the middle of the protest. But that time, thankfully with myself and another few strong Éireann people and patriots of Castlerea, we had each name and address wrote down that was in. There was actually over 120 people from Castlerea and the surrounding areas that was actually there. But then what had happened...
So the protest proceeded?
The protest proceeded, but they tried their endeavour for it not to proceed.
Okay.
Even up to Eugene Murphy, who was a current senator at that time, he said to himself, he pleaded with me not for it to go ahead because the people of Castlerea would be fearful. And I said, Eugene, I said, if they were fearful of their normal locals going having a protest, how would they feel about 52 undocumented men that I came into it? But at that precise time, I was led with information that there was going to be another one below on Patton Street coming forward too. They said, no, that is never going to happen. But it has unveiled that that place has folded out within the Patton Street at the moment. And the place that I held strong within in Castlerea, the only reason why they've held that back, they're just waiting for two of our own people to leave the building, and the only reason they're not leaving the building because there is actually no accommodation for them. And that's the sad reality about it. We're actually into a situation within our good current lands now that there is no accommodation to even rent for our own. And anyone that does want to rent in Balladreen at this precise time for a 2-bedroom apartment, you're paying from 11 to 1200. Pre-COVID you could get an apartment for 750 quid. So from that in, there's an infiltration of people, so there's actually a false economy going on with the rental markets.
Is it the system and how we manage it that is your issue?
Well, basically what the situation is and the way it is, basically with the control element of this element is, these migrants is being brought in for cheap work. That's exactly what the ultimate good thing of it is.
But I thought many people in the system, sorry Vincent, many people in the international protection applicant system aren't working surely or are eligible for work.
Well, if we go back to the situation, they're trying to tell us that they're all doctors, engineers and nurses, which they're not. And there's multiple videos of them to prove that they're not. So basically what had happened, Roger O'Gormley was the minister and he gave an open invitation in multiple languages and these people flooded in the place. So basically, Roger Gormley wasn't fully in his power and he should have contained the situation at that precise time. And it was Ukraine war is what it was used for first, and that it was an emergency situation.
Were you happy with that?
Well, I would have, of course, anyone that would be under jeopardy in war. You wouldn't like to see anyone losing life. You wouldn't like to see anyone suffering. And us as Irish people, we always had that sense of compassion in us. And we always had that love for people. And then from that, the government used it in their advantage. Because you can see what is going on there. Roger O'Gormley, like, we look at the bigger aspect of that man, he's the Minister for Children. Now, within the current cycle, when he was Minister of Children, there's a good few people, kids lost within the care. Now, I know myself, I'm 45 years of age. And I know myself that I would not like to think that within my current time in this land, that I was actually witnessing or let this thing happen. But the likes of Roger O'Gormley, he doesn't seem to be even held accountable. It seems to be like no sense of understanding for something you do wrong. Because it's just like yourself there, if you're working on a daily aspect and you do something wrong, there's someone held accountable or your business is going to go. But he seems to be up there, he can get a wage and there's no accountability. It's the lack of accountability is what's really gone wrong.
Yeah, well, I've watched some of your social media output and on TikTok and so on. You talk about getting our country back. So just so the voters can know, is your argument that the immigration is out of control, we're taking in too many people and it isn't being handled properly, but that you're comfortable with Ukrainian refugees and Syrian refugees and with people in general coming into the country? And also one will make the argument that a lot of immigrants have helped out in Ireland over the years in terms of working in hospitals, working in the services industry, and have integrated very well. So when you talk about our country back, that can sound to some people like an extreme or emotive message. So can you clarify how you feel about that?
Well, how I would clarify that. Well, first of all, get my country back. I would be still working on the relation to this. It would be Don Bunnock, 1937.
Yeah.
And that's a form of jurisdiction and everything else. When I be on about the country going back, like I just spoke to people below in the 6 counties. I look at here as a 32 county state. And unfortunately, even myself, when I was a young lad, you'd see there at 6 o'clock, you see about the tragedies that used to happen below in the north of Ireland. And we used to be up here and we never used to pass any heat. But they were suffering down there. They were our own. So now I had asked for a 32 county standing in relation to the overall agenda that was going on within our good lands. And there was mixed views was going on in relation to the situation, and there was a lot of disrepair that us up here, when the troubles was on down there, that we kind of sat back and we never passed any heed. So now when you're a bit in under jeopardy, you want us. But I tried to explain the situation that it doesn't work like that. But basically what, when you're on about get our country back, it's a form of humanity for our own. Because at this precise time, I was above in Dublin there a couple of weeks ago, and I walked around it, and I would have a fully familiar with energy. And the energy was that chaotic that I felt sorry for anyone that even had to live in the place, not alone work on the place, because if you were fully familiar, it was actually toxic. And I seen Irish people there, it was 2:30 in the day, sleeping in sleeping bags. You could nearly trip across them, and even our own seemed to not pass any heed. I seen videos there, then we see these people then that goes along there, rights for all, and then when they'd asked in, would you help out? And they would put propositions to them, they said no. And then we're actually at the government has infiltrated as such a thing to have a divide. They're creating a divide, and they're creating that even with NGOs and everything else.
Well, we don't know the specifics. Certainly, we don't know the specifics, I suppose, in the Roscommon people of that case. But just when you mention a 32 county Ireland, is that your aspiration by peaceful means, by democracy?
Oh yeah, when I learned about a 32 county Ireland, because I have talked to people belong to 6 counties, and I talked to, yes, they'll be very much on board again for United Ireland. And I was reckoning if we got a 32 county, we'd actually be able to contain our borders a lot more better, because at this precise time, the UK is actually using the 6 counties as like an infiltration to let them cross over freely.
Yeah.
But if we got a 32, we could actually contain this a bit more better, and we can't be using us as like scapegoats, because at this current moment in time, the UK is actually using us as an offcast.
Did you consider joining a political party to try to affect change at policy level in the future rather than running as an independent?
Well, I'm going to be quite honest with you, and I've looked at the party element of things, and they're all controlled under a party whip. Yeah. And I know individuals, and I spoke to individuals that actually is in underneath parties, and they would have things a bit different, but then that's the situation. They can't do it because they'll be cast off to one side. But then that's where me, as myself, I wouldn't let anyone give me that element of control in, because when you're true in your path and centred on your path, and you're true to yourself and you're true to your surroundings, why would you go on underneath people that's misleading? Because I basically at this precise time, I see them 3 main parties as misleading the general public. And they have a total disconnect with the public, and they have a total disconnect with their voters. I remember the time, and it was a very controversial time. I remember where you see politicians that get up into the back of a lorry and they will speak to that doesn't happen anymore. I remember witnessing two very dominant Fianna Fáil people, Sean Doherty and Terry Layden, having conversations out in the general public above the question. That doesn't happen anymore. And
outside churches and so on. Yeah.
So it's gone to the stage now we can see to a situation that they don't want to even talk to the public. And but when I go out with my campaign, I am going to start standing in towns, and I am going to meet the public.
Yeah.
I am doing a leaflet campaign, but I'm not going down the post element. I haven't the funding of these political parties, but I am going to meet the public, and I'm going to view them. If they have something welcome to me, and if they have judgment and criticism, I take it all on board. because I value everyone's opinion. And the way I look at life, everyone is their own unique individual, and everyone has their own energy, and everyone has their own opinion. And that has to be valued.
It's only a few months since the local elections. Why didn't you run in the local elections?
Well, to be honest with you, in the local election, I would go very much in relation to Spirit. Spirit would be guiding me on a daily basis. And I tell you exactly what had happened. Even this, I wasn't even told. I seen a post about my TikTok, and I just seen a person and the post were coming on, and I seen the concert, and I got very emotional, and I said to myself, do you know, our country, there is a spirit, there is a love, and there is a passion in it. And you cannot just sit back and let it lie. And within our land, there's a very strong energy. And if the people of our good land actually connected with that more, it would be a very magical place. Because the people of this land were very much connected to the land, and they had an understanding with the land and everything else. And if us on a daily basis actually took that element into us, it would be a very magical place. But unfortunately, the disconnect is there. So I would, if I don't get elected, and I'd be very honoured if I did, but I put myself in that. But if I just got one person out of the whole of the 32 counties to actually value the energy of the land and be better for themselves, I'd be a very happy person.
Okay, and just before we get on to the final few questions, I'm wondering there, if you feel that Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael and Sinn Féin have let down the country and can't be trusted, as you said, and that they're responsible for this disconnect, how do you feel the media is performing in the country in terms of representing people with your views?
Well, basically, the mainstream media, RT, I haven't watched telly in 6 years, because that's a propaganda for the government, and that's to be up and down with it. And as the saying goes, I hear people, and I do talk to people that actually watch RT, it's misleading the public, which is sad. And the mainstream media, they're only there to deliver one message. But is it real? Like each one of us has their own mind to make up on that. But I know myself, I have a personal view on it, and it's misleading. But that's up to each and every one. There's two ways you can look at it. They can either have a look at it and go out on a day-to-day basis and talk to people that's on the ground, or you can look at the 6 and 9 o'clock news. And if you talk to people day-to-day on the ground and see what's happening in real life, you can realise that the 6 and 9 o'clock news is misleading the people.
Okay, and I also saw on your own social media output that you say that the youth are disconnected, and obviously a big part of your argument is that there's a major disconnection in society. What can we do to get young people connected with politics and with democracy and with voting and so on?
Well, first of all, we look at a situation where you people, and I seen a video there. I was born at the stage where people had gone up to, you brought out like, the phone is a big demise to the youth today, which is sad to say. Because I seen a disco and there was people there, and then I seen them all with the phone up like this. So that was it. They weren't actually living in the moment or enjoying the moment, because that's all it's about. And wanting me to get a picture to look back on it. But I know a lot of people, there are actually 2 of them are going leaving for Australia in the next 2 weeks. They have good jobs in this country. They were given big rent, but they couldn't get a mortgage.
Right.
So that was the sad reality. But as is there has to be something more brought into communities to bring the people on board and give them a bit of understanding, because, and we're kind of most of the fault of this ourselves too. There's a big disconnect, because when you were up one time, we're going back in not too long ago in this good land, maybe the last 25, 30 years, there was grandparents stayed at home. There was they had different people giving them forms of communication and different aspects of histories and different stories. The youth don't have that today. Unfortunately, what is the sign today? The father and mother are working because they have borrowed themselves up to a certain standard of living. And unfortunately, people are very much stuck in the material world. Where one time the standard situation was, there was either one of the people worked and there was one of them stayed at home. Like, I have worked with women now that has actually spent all their life, and they've gone to past childbearing age, and that has a dramatic effect on them. And if they could put light back again, they would actually be more in the real world and not in the material world. But see, they actually have everyone, you're being groomed into a situation, and the situation is you make a decision at 17, 18, 19 years of age, you go into college, you form yourself a career, and then you're in the system. But when you weigh up on the journal aspect, that no one should actually make a serious decision in the light of the 26, 27 years of age, because your mind isn't fully developed. So, first of all, basically, us as mentors ourselves, we should be encouraging the kids a bit of a different aspect and how to get more connected with themselves and a deeper understanding and everything else. So, us as people were somewhat to blame for that ourselves. So each and every one of us has to look at ourselves as individuals and how can we actually educate the youth coming forward and give them a sense of importance first. Because youth today don't seem to have a sense of importance. And they don't know much about communication because people do not talk to them. But I make it a daily aspect. I say hello to everyone, young, old, or everything. And you can actually see when even going to filling stations, because I go into a regular filling station there, where there's youth there. I've actually, one day, it was a Monday morning, went into a filling station. There was 4 youth people. I said, you should be happy. And they weren't happy. But I actually brought them on a shamanic journey in a fire ceremony, and they looked at like a lot different. And that youth actually came onto the stage that they appreciated me a bit different for showing them a bit of time. And they got a different aspect to things, because when they went on a shamanic journey, they got messages, because I brought them on a message to their ancestral island. Well, that's where their ancestors come in and get them collective messages that actually related to them and has helped them off as individuals.
Okay. If you were elected in Roscommon, Galway, and bearing in mind that you're very sceptical about the established parties, what coalition or what party or what prospective Taoiseach would you support, or would you support any?
Well, to be honest with you, if I was elected up there, if I was, well, it would be a very honour if you were, first of all. I would be actually, I would be going up there and I would talk to like-minded nationalists, strong-minded people that actually has a passion and love for the country on a united level. And that we could actually be up there and that we could actually influence whatever leader will be up there. Well, we kind of know how it's going to unfold, and it's the 2 major political parties as they stay. So it's either going to be like the toss up a coin, who's going to be Taoiseach or Taoiseach. It's going to unfold much the same. So basically, the way I look at it, that you'd have to be up there and you'd have to keeping your voice being heard and keep it being heard. Not this thing about being up there with a silent voice and sit down and take a wage. Because I looked at the situation, if I got elected up there, I wasn't going to take it forward, because my aspect of the situation is that I'm going to set up a co-op community. And when I mean of a co-op community, I'm going to actually buy a parcel and set up a community there with housing there for people there that is actually going to be handed on in a legacy.
So you're going to devote part of your salary to a co-op community if you're elected?
Co-op community, yeah.
Right, okay.
Because the way I even look at that salary aspect of things, it's too much. And as I say, as a businessman said to me one day when in Castlereagh, the time I was in Castlereagh, he said, Vincent, one time to become a county councillor was an honour, but now these people are county councillors and get big wages and do not a lot. And that's a businessman, one of the oldest businessmen within Castlereagh. And he was true in what he said.
Just before we finish then, Vincent, away from, we'll say, the activism that you're getting involved in now, how do you relax in life? Are you interested in sport or music or any particular hobbies?
I tell you how I relax in life. I do a thing every morning, first of all, is a breathe. That's to look at myself as a person and see what's the best way I can go out into life each day. And then from that, my aspect of life will be go out. I will be very much in depth with nature. I would do a lot of grounding. When I mean grounding, I would be going around barefoot walking in nature. I would actually spend a lot of time dealing with like-minded people, and we would be actually doing shamanic fire ceremonies, and we would be actually bringing in, forming different forms of communities in different aspects of here at this precise time. Where someone is in the place, you go in and give them an assistance, encourage them on more, that they will bring communities. So we're actually making pockets of communities now at this precise time as we're going on. And if that is going to be my goal, indefinite anyways, I'm not going to actually disregard my country. I'm not going to disregard my people. The only reason I went forward in a general election is just to give a voice. And with that then, it might actually plant a seed within their head to say, well, do you know, there is something more into life than this material aspect.
So can people find out about your shamanic healing and everything you do on social media?
Well, they can. I'm Spirit of Freedom on TikTok, and that's basically it. I've only used, there's people who wants to encourage me to start going on to X and start promoting it more out with X, but at this moment in time, I have an account with on TikTok called Spirit of Freedom.
Okay. So you'll be getting your message out there. So Vincent, I think we'll leave it at that. We'll obviously you're going to connect with the people during the campaign, and we wish you the very best in the campaign, as we do all the candidates. It takes courage to put your name on the ballot paper. So unless there's anything else you want to add, Vincent, we'll wish you the very best of luck.
I'm very grateful. I'm very thankful to have met you in your time, and it's an honour.
Okay, thank you, Vincent Beirne. Thank you.